The storm raged so violently outside that John Miller, a grizzled Army veteran, thought the cabin walls might crack. Snowflakes hurled themselves at the wooden frame like tiny icy knives. Inside, John sat stiffly on his old armchair, wrapped in a worn wool blanket, staring at the crackling fire. He'd spent countless winters in this lonely cabin, deep in the woods, far from towns, far from noise, far from people, just the way he liked it. He reached for his metal mug, the warm tea inside offering little comfort to his tired bones. He glanced at the window, nothing but a blur of white. But then, thump. His muscles tensed. Thump. Another thud, louder this time, shaking the thin wooden door. John's instincts from his military days kicked in immediately. He set down the mug and reached for the shotgun resting by the fireplace. No one ever came here. Not neighbors, not hikers, only animals. And they didn't knock. Heart pounding, he moved cautiously, boots creaking against the wooden floorboards. He peeked out through the frosted window but saw only shifting shadows in the storm. This time, a low, muffled sound followed, almost like a groan. Gritting his teeth, John unlatched the door and yanked it open, shotgun raised. What he saw made him freeze. A massive brown bear, easily 700 pounds, stood on his porch, covered in snow, shivering violently. Its fur was tangled with ice, its head lowered, its breath steaming in short, shallow bursts. For a second, John's grip tightened on the shotgun. Every instinct screamed, danger. But then, the bear lifted its gaze, and John's breath caught in his throat. The bear's eyes weren't wild or aggressive. They were pleading. He should have slammed the door, should have fired a warning shot. But something about the bear's broken posture, the sheer desperation in its trembling body, rooted John to the spot. Carefully, cautiously, John lowered the shotgun. The bear gave a soft grunt, swayed slightly, and then collapsed in a heap, half in, half out of the doorway. John cursed under his breath. This was insane. He was no animal rescuer, no wildlife expert, just an old soldier trying to live out his years in peace. But could he really leave this creature to die in the storm? Muttering to himself, John grabbed a heavy blanket and, heart pounding, tossed it over the bear's massive back. He built the fire higher, his cabin now suddenly feeling far too small for both man and beast. As the hours dragged on, the bear lay motionless, save for occasional shudders. John kept watch from across the room, rifle resting on his knees just in case. He spoke softly, half to the bear, half to himself. "You're lucky you're not trying anything," he muttered, "or we'd both be in trouble." When the storm finally lessened near midnight, John dared to approach. To his surprise, the bear opened its eyes, tracking his movements, but making no sound. That's when John noticed something he hadn't before. A deep, nasty wound on the bear's flank, crusted over with ice and dirt. He winced. "Damn," he murmured, running a hand through his gray hair. "No wonder you're here." John worked carefully, using his old military medkit, cleaning what he could while whispering calming words. To his shock, the bear barely flinched, as if it understood. Or maybe it was just too weak to fight. By dawn, both man and bear were exhausted. John leaned back against the wall, watching the sleeping giant, wondering what on earth he had just invited into his life. But deep down, something stirred in his chest. Something he hadn't felt in years. Purpose.
The storm raged through the night, and by the time Emma woke up the next morning, the rain had slowed to a light drizzle. The air smelled fresh, and the world outside was covered in a blanket of mist, with the trees and fields appearing like they were caught in a dream. The faint hum of the wind through the branches was the only sound that could be heard, but even that seemed subdued. Emma took a deep breath, trying to shake off the strange, lingering sense of unease that had settled over her since she dropped John off. The storm had passed, but something didn't feel right. She went about her morning routine, checking on the animals, feeding the chickens, and tending to the garden. But her mind kept drifting back to the events of the night before. She kept wondering why John had been on the side of the road, what he was running from, and why he seemed so distant. There was something about him, something buried deep inside of him that she couldn't shake off. By mid-morning, Emma was outside again, sitting on the old porch swing, sipping her coffee, trying to clear her thoughts. The world around her was still and quiet, save for the occasional rustle of the trees. The sun, partially hidden behind thick clouds, cast a muted glow over the farm. Everything seemed so ordinary, yet Emma couldn't help but feel like her life was on the verge of being changed forever. She was lost in thought when she heard it, a strange, deep humming noise that grew louder by the second. Her first thought was that it was another storm approaching, but the sound didn't match the usual rumblings of thunder. Looking up, Emma's heart skipped a beat. She squinted, trying to make sense of what she was seeing in the distance. At first it looked like a bird, but the size of it was impossible. The noise grew deafening, and the object came into clearer view, a military helicopter soaring just above the tree line. It was dark, sleek, and fast, its rotors cutting through the sky like a predator in search of prey. Emma's heart raced, her breath catching in her throat as she stood up, staring in disbelief. The helicopter was heading straight toward her farm. She couldn't believe her eyes. It was as though time had frozen in place. This wasn't just any military helicopter. It looked like the Black Hawk she had seen in movies, the kind used for special operations and rescues. As it neared, the helicopter slowly began its descent, kicking up dust and debris as the wind from the rotors whipped through the air. Emma's heart pounded harder in her chest. Why was it landing here? Was there an emergency? Was her farm the target of some covert mission? The helicopter touched down in her field, just yards from the porch. Emma stood frozen, the steam rising from the wet grass in the cool morning air, her mind racing with questions she couldn't answer. The rotor blades slowly came to a stop, and the rear hatch of the helicopter opened. Emma's body tensed as two soldiers in full gear emerged. They looked serious, their eyes scanning the area. One of them turned and gestured for someone inside the helicopter to come out. Then, to Emma's utter shock, a man stepped out, a man she knew all too well. It was John, the same man she had given a ride to just the day before. His expression was completely different now. Gone was the lost, exhausted hitchhiker she had seen yesterday. This man now wore a military uniform, his posture rigid, his demeanor commanding. Emma's heart dropped into her stomach. She stepped forward, trying to speak, but no words came. John looked at her, his eyes narrowing in recognition. "I never wanted you to get involved in this, Emma. Before he could finish, the lead soldier approached Emma, his face cold and stoic. "Ma'am, you need to come with us. You've been involved in a national security situation, and we have to debrief you." Emma was speechless. National security. She blinked, trying to process the words. "What do you mean?" "This doesn't make any sense. He's just a man I picked up on the road." The soldier's face didn't change. "You don't understand. This isn't just a man you gave a ride to. He's a top-level government agent on a secret mission. The situation has escalated, and now we need your cooperation." Emma felt the weight of the situation crashing down on her. She had picked up a secret agent, and now the military was on her farm, bringing her into something that she could barely comprehend. John stepped toward her, his face softening. "Emma, I'm sorry for dragging you into this. It's just part of the job. But you need to understand. You did the right thing yesterday. You saved me, and now the entire operation is at risk because of me." Emma was dizzy, her mind racing. What was going on? Why had her life just turned upside down? Why was she now standing in the middle of a national security crisis, surrounded by soldiers and a military helicopter? The shock of it all left her feeling like she was stuck in a mow,